with that being said, I'd love to get into the topic for this week, which is Pride. Today is the first day of Pride Month for 2025. And I just want to talk quickly about an experience I had yesterday. Because yesterday, I tabled at Bethel Pride. And Bethel Pride is pretty incredible. It's been going on for 8 years. I learned that it was started by 3 teenagers who were just like, we should have this. And we're like, maybe 5 people will come out. And then 500 people came out. Sounds very familiar to us, to me, in my opinion. But it was an incredible event that so many people have truly put their heart and soul into to create such an incredible space where there were so many young people there who knew each other and felt connected, and there was so much community and so many people who were supporting each other. They were doing bands in one room, and all the artists knew each other from the open mic nights. They were doing resources in one room, and the community centers all knew each other because they worked together to provide resources to the people they served. It was truly incredible. And standing there, one of the things that I could not help but feel looking at it was a feeling of jealousy, to be honest. A feeling of watching a lot of kids getting to live the way I know I missed out on. Getting to be open and accepting and proud of who they were at that age. Seeing a young 8-year-old kid running around knowing that whoever they turn out to be is going to be great. And me realizing I didn't have that until my 20s. I didn't even know I was queer, specifically because I wasn't open to it because I didn't have a lot of these spaces. And in that moment, that jealousy feels kind of bad. It kind of feels frustrating. But I think it's really important because I think it speaks to the power of these spaces, first of all. It speaks to how transformational it's been. When I was younger, I didn't have these spaces. But now not only do we have these spaces, they're incredible. They're well organized, long running. There's people who go to them every year. There are so many people creating the power of these spaces. And it's amazing that it's come so far that I can look at it and go, wow, that's the life I wish I could have had. And moving on from that, it gave me thoughts of, well, it's fair that I'm jealous. It's fair that I have these complex feelings. But I think this is another example of the fact that complex and difficult feelings, uncomfortability, are not just not signs that we're doing something wrong. Sometimes they're signs that we've done something right. They're signs that we've made progress. And I think being able to look at people who do not have to go through the things you had to is part of loving your neighbor. It's part of the heart of our organization. And when talking with queer people at the event yesterday, one thing I found is a lot of the older individuals there, and yes, I'm including myself at 29 because the average age was quite lower than me. We've been through some pretty difficult things, some really tough experiences. But the older we got, the worse experiences you heard. The people who were in their 40s and 50s faced more out-and-out discrimination than I did. The people who were in their 70s and 80s talked about facing actual violence. And in those moments, we need to stop and realize, yes, it's fair to be jealous, but also, this is the entire point. We are here because we know that the people who are like us shouldn't have to go through the things we went through. They don't need to. They will go through their own things that will make them who they are. And if we can help them be those people without having to suffer unnecessarily, that's beautiful. That is loving your neighbor. And I think it's just another great example of how sometimes, in order to really fight for these things, we don't just have to recognize the basics, like the fact that we have to be out loud and vocal, but we also have to create spaces themselves. But it also reminds us that fighting for these things is never simple. It might seem simple to love your neighbor, but actually doing it can be really complicated. And it's okay to recognize when we're having a tough time for that and take a step back to truly figure out where we need to go from here. Because in that moment, at Pride, I felt a little guilty until I stopped And I gave myself room to process it and think through these things I've shared. And at the end, I realized that that guilt was real, but it was also something to be celebrated. It's something I could not have been more excited that I got to feel. And I think that speaks to how messy pride can be, how messy social justice can be, how messy activism can be, how messy growing as a person can be. And I'm really, really excited that here we've made a space where people can explore that. That when I went to Pride and felt all this wholesome and wonderful energy, it reminded me of the energy I feel right here on this corner with all of you guys every single week. Thank you.